few months, I've been engaged in a number of conversations and received a number of requests on the topic of a materiality matrix in the context of the ESRS. Now, these requests or conversations have ranged from everything including, hey, Phil, can you draw or come up with a matrix for me, to here is a representation of a kind of matrix that someone is proposing for the ESRS, all the way to people suggesting or even insisting that a matrix of some kind is critical, or even, in the most egregious examples, necessary for a company in order to conduct or complete their double materiality analysis. So I want to look in a bit more detail about this concept of the materiality matrix. And the headline here, for anyone who can't be bothered listening to the rest of this video, is, in the context of the ESRS, a materiality matrix doesn't really make much sense. So what do people mean when they talk about a matrix in the context of materiality? Most of us are familiar with the concept of a matrix in principle. What it normally represents is two axes with two variables, and a y variable and an x variable, and you plot things on the two axes according to the strength of each variable. So you'd have a scale from low to high, for example, and you would have the similar scale, 1 to 10, low to high, 0 to 3, whatever it is. And you would have these two variables, and you're plotting things on these two axes, and wherever they lie presents you with kind of a matrix arrangement. In some cases, you might do this in a quadrant style, where you might have some sort of yes-no options, perhaps. You might say that x is either on or off, and y is either on or off. And then you might place things in those quadrants. But at this point, there's kind of no point in having a matrix because the space within that matrix doesn't mean anything, right? Everything that is listed in that quadrant is exactly the same. Everything that is listed in this quadrant is exactly the same. There's no need for this two-dimensional space if you're dealing with just an on-off, a binary position. There's no need for this to be two-dimensional. What you are actually doing in that case is you're just making a list of things, the list of things where y is yes and x is yes equals those things, the list where y is equal to no and x is equal to yes is equals to these things, etc., etc. This is just a list. Okay, so that is what we're talking about when we talk about a matrix in principle. Now let's look at why the matrix has been used, or what seems to be convincing people that they need a matrix in the context of the ESRS when it comes to materiality. Here we have then the most famous and I guess the primary example of a materiality matrix. And this is a matrix which was produced, promoted, and used in the context of the GRI Sustainability Reporting Standards. So this is where a matrix concept and materiality and sustainability reporting kind of have their origins. And here you can see we have on the x-axis down the bottom a scale for significance of impact. So that is otherwise known as the significance of an issue. How important is a topic or an issue? And then on the y-axis, on the left-hand side, going up, is the importance to stakeholders of a topic. So the more important the issue is for a stakeholder, the higher it will be on the y-axis, and the more important it is in terms of its impact, the further along the x-axis it will be. And on this kind of diagram, typically the material topics for a company, the ones it reports, would have been those that fall into the top right-hand corner or the sort of top right half of this diagram in some way. Now, this makes perfect sense in the context of the GRI because the GRI measured materiality against these two variables. How important is it to the stakeholder, and how impactful is the topic for the company? It was a two-perspective materiality assessment. There were two variables, and each topic was measured against those two variables. So it made perfect sense for a topic to be mapped in a matrix form under the GRI 2016 standards. That is important to note. This matrix was applied for the GRI 2016 standards. Now, those of you who have been keeping up with the development of the GRI will know that the 2016 standards are no longer the most up-to-date standards. And that brings us to the next little point of today's video. Is the matrix still valid even under the GRI context? This document you see here is the FAQ for the new GRI standards. This is the 2021 standards, and this FAQ was issued by the GRI in December of 2022. So this document is now coming up 1.5 years old. I want to draw your attention to one of the specific questions in this document, and that is question 41. Is there a new materiality matrix for use with the revised GRI Universal Standards? Let's go to that. And here's the answer to this question. The materiality matrix from GRI 101 Foundation is not included in GRI 2021 Foundation. The revision to the concept of a material topic eliminates the need for a matrix as the concept no longer encompasses two independent criteria. So, what have we learned from this? The GRI has dropped the use of the materiality matrix because under the GRI regime, materiality is no longer encompassing two independent criteria. Now, for the ESRS, we know that the two primary perspectives are not independent of each other. They are, in fact, explicitly interdependent. And furthermore, we also know that the overall process of determining materiality under the ESRS is not comprised of two variables that can be applied to all sustainability matters. There are, in fact, a number of variables and thresholds which all contribute towards the decision-making process. So for the GRI, we now can see that in the light of the way they've adapted the methodology, which is actually a lot more similar to the ESRS, representing materiality with a matrix is no longer necessary, and it's no longer included in the standard. For the same reason, then, we should be able to say that under the ESRS, a matrix representation of materiality is not necessary. It is not critical. Now, what I always say to my team and the other professionals that I deal with is if you want to know anything about the ESRS, the best thing to do is to actually read and consult the ESRS. So in order to just be consistent with my own advice to others, let's check the ESRS itself to see if the concept of a matrix or mention of a matrix or matrices in the context of double materiality is even mentioned. So this is the delegated regulation. This is from the 31st of July. This is when the ESRS was published into law, and we're going to check the entire set of standards for the word matrix. So let's just do that with a classic word search in the browser, and the word matrix appears only once in the entire set of standards, and that is in the glossary with respect only to habitat fragmentation, and it is clarification of the presence of matrix type habitat. So there is no reference at all to matrix in the ESRS that relates to double materiality in any way. We'll just try the word matrices, just in case they are using some other words to describe it. Matrices is not included. And visualization, visual, not mentioned either. So there is absolutely no reference to a matrix or a matrices or visualization, in fact, in connection with double materiality in the ESRS. It is certainly not necessary, required, or critical. We'll consult now some of the guidance documents as well. This document here, IG1, is the Materiality Assessment Implementation Guidance. This came out in 2024 in February by EFRAG. Now, this is not authoritative. So the only authoritative document is the standard itself. This is non-authoritative guidance, but it is certainly very helpful. So let's once again type the word matrix. And here we do have a matrix mentioned. It is mentioned once in the entire guidance. And here we have a suggested illustrative purposes only way of visualizing severity and likelihood. That is it. Just severity and likelihood, which are two of the characteristics of impacts only. Now, this is a very, very narrow part of the double materiality process, but it's only impacts. This does not apply to risks or opportunities because severity is not a characteristic of a risk or an opportunity. So, my point is here is that it is possible to do some visualizations of some of the characteristics within a double materiality assessment. Yes, that is possible, potentially helpful, but it is only mentioned once, this kind of matrix, in the entire guidance paper, and it is not in the context of representing the results of the assessment. Now we'll go to visualization because there are some other visuals in this guidance paper, which are also quite helpful. So here is a visualization of a severity assessment, and this is just for negative impacts. So here we have a sort of severity scoring and a materiality indication. But this is not particularly helpful for a user of the materiality assessment results. This is simply to help people who are doing materiality understand what the guidance paper is getting at, right? This is not a visualization of the results of double materiality. So the concept of visualization, of matrix, of matrices is very, very lightly applied in the guidance, and it is only in reference to one or two of the sub parts of the process in order to help visualize the guidance content. There is no mention and no recommendation to represent the results of double materiality in a matrix form. There is additionally this diagram here in IG1, which is figure 1A, and it shows a sustainability matter may be material for impact reasons, that is the yellow section. It may be material for financial reasons, that is the blue section, or it may be material for reasons of both. That is, it is financially material and impact material, and therefore it fits in the middle. Now, this is a very basic Venn diagram. Now, there are attempts to try and turn this into a matrix, but this is a Venn diagram, and that is the way EFRAG have represented this. And actually what this is a list. And we talked about this at the start of the video, that we actually have three lists here. A list of the matters which are impact material, a list which are material for both, and a list which are material for financial reasons. This is not a two-dimensional layout where you can place matters inside these three categories, and their placement within those categories in a two-dimensional sense makes any sense at all. You cannot have something that is more impact material than something else, or that is less financially material than something else, certainly not at the topic level. Now, there are some ways you could conceptualize weighting a sustainability matter based on the number of contributing impacts, risks, or opportunities for that matter or that topic. So this diagram is kind of getting us in the direction of the kind of visualization I think does make sense for materiality in the ESRS context, but this is not a matrix. It is a Venn diagram, and this is not showing two variables on two scales. So I think we're getting to some sort of consensus, hopefully now, that the matrix is not only unnecessary, but could be misleading. So we know from the ESRS that a sustainability matter may be material or not material. And we also know that it may be material for financial reasons, for impact reasons, or for both. So it seems then we have actually 4 states for any sustainability matter. The first state is that it is not material. So a sustainability matter can be not material. And then a sustainability can be material, but for impact reasons only. So this is impact material. We can have a sustainability matter which is material for financial reasons only. So this would be one that is financially material. And then we can have a sustainability matter which is material for both reasons. And that would be here. And this one is both impact and financially material. Now, at first glance, this does look like we can represent all sustainability matters in 4 quadrants. And we want to show all of our matters on these 4 quadrants. The problem here is we've got 100 plus sustainability matters to consider, and that is not including any entity-specific sustainability matters. So somehow now we have to put 100 items on this diagram. And the sustainability matters do not have reference numbers. They are full sentences. So we're going to have to now place potentially 90 or 95 sustainability matters in one of these quadrants. So let's say you're a small entity and you only have 12 material sustainability matters. You could put a few of them in this quadrant, list them out, a few of them in this quadrant, list them out, and a few of them in this quadrant, list them out. At this stage, it's looking relatively okay. You've got 4 lists, but now you've got to find room in this here for 85 plus sustainability matters, all of which are non-material. The solution then would just be to ignore all of the non-material sustainability matters in this case, at which point you no longer have 3 quadrants at all. Now you have a Venn diagram. And that is exactly the situation that EFRAG have in their guidance paper. So now you would have your material matters that are for both reasons in the middle, the impact ones on the left, and the financial ones on the right. Now this works fine if you are a small enterprise. If, however, you are a large enterprise with a large number of sustainability matters which are material, then you have a problem once again. So let's go with the Venn diagram. Let's say you have 50 sustainability matters which are material for one reason or the other. Now you've got a list of a huge number of sustainability matters in your Venn diagram, most of which will be unreadable. The second problem is, what is the hierarchy here? Why are some at the top of the list and some at the bottom of the list? Does this two-dimensional space here mean anything? Is the position left or right, up or down, inside each circle relevant in any way to this visualization? If it is not relevant, then what you have is a list. You don't even have a diagram. You simply have a list of sustainability matters. Those that are material for impact reasons, those that are material for financial reasons, and those that are material for both. And by far the better way of informing the reader is to list them, and is not to try and squeeze them all into some kind of ridiculous visualization. Okay, so now let's say we've decided that visualizing sustainability matters makes no sense. There are too many of them. It is too hard to squeeze them into a diagram. So we are going to collapse everything down to the topics. There are 10 topics currently. We don't have any sector standards yet, so we have 10 topics. And we'll go back to a 4-quadrant, and we'll take our 10 topics, and we'll put 2 of them in material for both. 4 of them will be non-material. 1 will be material for financial reasons. And that leaves us with 10 minus 7 rather, is 3. That leaves us 3 over here to be material for impact reasons. So we could do that. We could write the names of these topics. Problem is, what determines, once again, the position in this diagram? Both left and right, and up and down. Is the one at the top more material than the one at the bottom of the list? If they're displayed left to right, or up to bottom to top, does that mean anything? Or are they just simply being dumped in the center of each quadrant and listed? If that is the case, then you don't really need a visualization. All you have is a list. You have a list of 4 things: those that are material for financial reasons, those that are material for impact reasons, those that are material for both, and those that are not material at all. This is actually just a list, and the visualization is not really necessary. The second part that is completely missing, whether you map them as sustainability matters or whether you map the topics on your diagram, is you have no indication of whether or not these topics or matters are material for the reasons of them being positive or negative, which is quite critical information, especially for someone who may be not familiar with sustainability reporting and maybe not familiar with your business or your business model, to understand where you have positive and negative topics and matters. Further complicating this is the fact that any individual topic or sustainability matter may have a number of impacts, risks, and opportunities which may be spread across the positive and negative spectrum. So you may have 5 negative impacts, 6 positive financial opportunities. You might have 3 risks and 2 positive impacts, all relating to one sustainability topic, because remember, the topics contain many sustainability matters. And so this kind of visualization doesn't show any of that. It shows none of the positive, negative direction of your business. It doesn't show any of the contribution in terms of how many matters are contributing, how many impacts, risks, or opportunities are material, what the spread of that is between the financial and the impact, and certainly for the both category. So we have a really big problem here with this kind of quadrant display, is that most of the sustainability information, most of the double materiality information is lost. All we are doing with this 4-quadrant display is making a list. And actually it makes more sense to have a list, because then we don't have this problem of the 2-dimensional space. What does the position in 2-dimensional space actually mean for each of the points that you decide to display in your quadrant? Just use a list. Okay, so I've now gone to the point where I've hopefully at least made you ask the question, does it even make sense to use a 4-quad, a matrix of any kind? In fact, is it misleading the reader of my sustainability information if I try to present the matters or the topics in this kind of quadrant or a matrix? It may actually be misleading. Now I'm going to propose a solution for this whole problem, which I think makes sense. And a little bit of a pitch here for Code Gaia. This is how we are going to be visualizing the results of double materiality at Code Gaia. I'm going to stick with the sketching tool rather than show you the actual software diagrams for this piece here. because I've been using it so far in the video and I quite like it. It's Microsoft Paint, by the way, the greatest visual tool ever developed. So this is how we think double materiality, or the results of double materiality, can be visualized in a really informative way, and this is the way we do it at CodeGaia. What we first do is we grab each of the topics and we can place them along a horizontal bar with a gap between those that are, for example, environmental, and then social, and then moving on to governance at the end, with all of the 10 topics like this. Now, for each topic, we can indicate whether the topic itself is material or not. So here we have 4 material topics and 2 non-material topics. Obviously, this is less than the full 10 that exists, but we're doing this just for illustrative purposes. Right, so now we can already see which topics are material and which topics are not material. And the name of the topic exists, of course, E1 would be climate there. And so the name of each topic is displayed as well for the user. So the first piece of information we see immediately, I can see how many topics there are in total. I can see the split between the E, S, and G, and I can see which topics are material for this company and which are not material. Then we can go a step further here, and we can start placing indicators above and below the line for the total permutations of impacts, risks, and opportunities, both positive and negative. So what we can do here is we can show, for example, whether an impact is positive or negative. And by doing this, I'm going to say this is an impact, and this is an impact. And this is an impact, and this is an impact. The red impacts are negative, and the green impacts are positive. And I can do the same with risks and opportunities. So here I've got risks, and here I've got opportunities, and below here, risks and opportunities. We'll use the same coloring that we use for impact, so opportunities are considered positive, and risks are considered negative. Then what we have here, above and below the line, is the materiality. Everything above the line indicates a material, impact, risk, or opportunity. So the non-material topics will have nothing above the line. So in this topic, we may have 2 items below the line. In this topic, we will have some items above the line and potentially below the line. This topic will only have items below the line. This topic will have items above the line and potentially below the line, and so will this topic. Then what we do is we indicate whether these things are impacts or risks and opportunities. So we identified risks, we identified a risk here, we identified an impact here, and an impact here. We identified yada, 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 all the way through RO, RI, I, and O, for example. And we go and color them in. So we can see the positive-negative relationship. So we could say there was a positive impact that was found to be not material, and there was a financial risk, which was found to be not material. There was a negative impact, which was found to be not material, a negative impact, which was found to be material, and a positive impact, which was found to be material. A risk, which was found to be non-material, and an impact that was positive, which was found to be not material. And then we have an opportunity, which is material up here, a negative impact, which is material, a negative impact, which is material, and an opportunity, which is material here. So now we're starting to see the spread of impacts, risks, and opportunities, those that were material and those that were not material, above and below the materiality line for each topic. Now we can go one further, and we can add a count. So we can weight how many of each there were for each topic. So in this case, I can put a 3 here. This indicates there were 3 negative impacts which were material for this topic. And maybe there were 4 positive impacts which were not material. And 1 positive impact which was material. And then we can go and add the numbering to all of these so the user can see the total number of impacts, risks, and opportunities that were assessed, how many were material, how many which were not material, the breakdown between those which were positive and negative, or in the case of finance, risks and opportunities, and as I mentioned right at the start, the full set of material topics then are those which are indicated visually, in this case in blue, and which have at least one material IRO above the materiality line. So this, I think, is a far more informative, far more complete and visually helpful way of showing the results of double materiality. And this is what Code Gaia is going to present in our software. I look forward to feedback on this visualization and comment on the applicability, or perhaps, as I would suggest, the inapplicability of the matrix for ESRS double materiality. Thanks very much. We'll speak again soon.